Old story, but in 2007, I was involved in a traffic accident on the I-95, I-695 ramp in Baltimore. Traffic went from the speed limit, 55 miles per hour, to a dead stop around the curve of the exit in a space of 500 feet, and it had just started raining. I and my Honda Accord managed to stop literal inches from the bumper of the person in front of me. I had enough time to let out half a sigh of relief before I was rear-ended so hard that the can of tea in my waist-level console cup holder wound up splattered all over the windshield. I got out of the car, and the person who hit me was literally crying blood. She was driving a Saturn that was at least a decade old, and the ancient airbag broke her nose and blackened both of her eyes. She was also crying for real because this was her only transportation. I said, "Fuck," grabbed an umbrella out of my now weirdly shaped back seat, and held it over her while she sobbed, explained that her brakes had been locking up lately, and that she was literally on her way to the mechanics. She tried to text her boyfriend to pick her up, but was crying so hard that she dropped her phone twice. Then a cop showed up. Baltimore cops are notorious, so he wrote this girl a ticket for failure to control speed to avoid an accident, reckless endangerment, and half a dozen other charges, making the ticket cost more than a new car. She might face license revocation and/or jail time. She was hysterical. I talked to her, reassured her it wasn't her fault, and managed to swap insurance information. Fast forward 2 months. I had mild whiplash, but I was healed up and mostly fine regarding the accident. I had a new car and everything. I received a notice in the mail requesting me to be a witness for this poor girl's trial for her ticket. No obligation to show, but it would be appreciated. I wasn't going to let that cop roast her, so I took a day off work to show up. I arrived in court dressed in my civil servant best. I was working for the state government at the time, so however staid you imagine, multiply it by 3, and even put on some makeup to impress the judge. I waited 3 hours for her hearing because I wasn't going to risk being late. The cop went first, making up a bunch of nonsense about how recklessly she was driving. To have hit me in an accident he was probably 10 miles away from witnessing based on his response time. Then the judge called me, and I stood up. The cop looked a weird combination of surprised and angry, like he didn't expect me to show. The poor girl was already crying and started crying more. I got on the stand, was sworn in, and told the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I stated that we were going exactly the speed limit. I knew because I checked my speedometer in surprise that there wasn't more traffic. I said she was following a proper distance behind me because I had checked my rearview mirror, and she was a ways off. I mentioned that it had just started raining after a dry week, so the road was incredibly slippery, and I knew that because I had almost slid into the car in front of me, only saved by my car's ABS. I noted that her wheels had locked because I had heard the screech and seen the skid marks, and that she definitely wasn't at fault since she was on her way to get her car's old ABS fixed. I also mentioned that the cop didn't show up until 20 minutes later. I know this sounds like an everyone clapped moment, but the judge did thank me for doing my civic duty and turning up. I received a quick hug from the poor girl after the judge dismissed her charges. Anyway, Baltimore cops are notorious, and if you can show up in court to fight a traffic ticket, even for someone else, you should do so.